Hey, everybody, I'm Andrew White, and this is Everything's Bigger, the inside story of the people and power shaping Texas. When you imagine a great candidate for public office, what comes to mind? A military veteran? Maybe an F 16 pilot who flew 40 combat missions? Maybe an astronaut who piloted the Space Shuttle? Or how about a commander of the International Space Station who spent 6 months in space? Today, we have a candidate who is all of these things, Colonel Terry Virts. Colonel Virts wants to be the next congressman from Texas, representing the new District 9, which covers Central to East Houston. It's a competitive primary in a gerrymandered district, but Beto carried it in 2018, so it's winnable. Democrats have a chance to nominate one of the great American patriots. He has my endorsement, and now he needs yours. Here's the inside story of the people and power shaping Texas today. What I want to do is start to dive a little deeper into Terry and your background and get to know you better. And in my opinion, the easiest way to get to know somebody better is to ask them what's their favorite chili con queso. Like where do you get the best queso in your district or in your life, wherever it was? I'm just curious.
We have several go-tos. La Escondida is a great restaurant, but Chewy's is kind of a chain. You find them around, but man,
Yeah.
they have great queso.
That Chewy's is legit. I mean, we've got one right around the corner. That's an easy one. I
You
love it.
know, the other thing for barbecue is Rudy's. And like when
Mhm.
people come to visit me from around the country, around the world, I take them to Rudy's. It's a chain. You find them all over the place, and it's my favorite.
More important is the world that we live in today. You're running for Congress in Texas in District 9. Colonel Virts is actually your official title, I would think. You're a retired colonel from the Air Force. Take us back to a little bit what got you into public service.
Well, when folks ask me why I'm running for Congress, I always tell them I lost a bet. But when I was a kid, I loved airplanes. I had a picture of the original red, white, and blue F-16 on my wall. I had space posters. I had a poster of the all-white Space Shuttle Columbia, the very first few missions. That's what I wanted to do my whole life. And I read a book called The Right Stuff when I was in high school. It's an awesome book, by the way. The movie is still great if you haven't seen it, but it's about the early astronauts. And so um, those guys have been fighter pilots and test pilots, and I thought, well, that's what I want to do. Now, I'm the first guy to go to college in my family. It wasn't like I was born in a family of astronauts or pilots or anything. My mom had to leave her home at age 16, had to leave school to go work just to put food on the table. So I'm the first guy to go to college. But when I was a kid, I really I believed in America. And I remember reading 1984 in high school, the George Orwell book, thinking, man,
Did you read that in 1984? Because that was a real popular year to read it.
in 1984, I was in high school. I did an exchange. There's this program called AFS, and I went to Finland. I didn't know where Finland was. I had to get the map out, and you don't get to pick. They tell you where you're going. And I literally lived with a Finnish family on a lake, and on the other side of the lake was the Soviet Union.
Wow.
And we could look across the lake, and there was a little guard tower. We could see a soldier over there. A little town called Imatra, and it made an impression on me. I was 16 years old. It really made an impression on me. So I joined the Air Force when I was 17. The following year, I went to the Air Force Academy to help defend us against the Soviet Union. Ronald Reagan called them the evil empire. They were, and I believed it. And so that's really, Andrew, that's what motivated me to join the Air Force.
They were the evil empire, and they sort of still are today in Ukraine. That's for sure. So you went from the Air Force Academy, you graduated. You could have done anything at that point. What did you go do after you graduated?
So I wanted to fly. I went to pilot training. I had a chance to go to grad school. I'm like, I'm tired of school. That's enough. That's enough writing papers. So I went to pilot training, flew F-16s basically throughout the whole 90s. Flew 45 combat missions in Iraq. Was based in Asia and Europe and all across America. So that was awesome. That was a really fun time.
Hey,
And then,
before you get too far,
yeah.
take me to your first combat mission. You've been training for years and years and years.
Yeah.
and now this is the first time when they aren't blanks, they're really shooting at you.
Yeah.
Yeah, what was that like?
It was daunting. This was in the '90s. We were enforcing the no-fly zone over Iraq, so Iraq was still bad guy country, like,
Wow.
Saddam was still in charge, so we were flying literally over enemy territory, um, and you go up to the airplane, and for years, you have training rounds. The missiles have different color paint on them. Blue means training, and yellow means combat, and it was weird to go up and see, like, yellow and brown, like, the actual combat rounds. The gun was hot, so, you pull the trigger and 100 rounds a minute would come out, so it was really daunting, and I was nervous, I was scared, I was like, what if?
Mhm. How old?
But oh my god, my first combat mission, I was 27 years old. Wow, I hadn't thought that through.
Just a kid?
I'm trying to do the math, yeah. Yeah, I turned 30 a few years later. I think I was in I think I was deployed when I turned 30, but yeah,
At that point,
I was
though,
in my late 20s.
you I mean, you became a commander, later on in your career, but at 27, you were following another commander, or were you the commander already? I know in the military,
So,
people start young.
yeah. Yeah. So, in the Air Force, I was a flight commander, which is kind of like a small deal. I was only a captain at that point. But when we were flying over Iraq, I was what's called the flight lead, so I could be the leader of the group of F-16s that went out. Eventually, I was the mission commander, so we had F-16s and F-15s and tankers and AWACS and electronic warfare aircraft, and we often had international partners, like the French were there or the British were there or whatever. So, eventually, I was the mission commander, but I left I kinda left the Air I spent up through captain in the Air Force, and then I moved here to Houston, this part of Houston, 25 years ago to come to NASA. So um, although I was still in the Air Force, I wasn't like a traditional squadron commander or wing commander. I was on loan, to NASA. I did eventually become the commander of the space station, about a decade later.
Man, I tell you, you just covered a bunch of territory there. I wanna dive into some of that. Okay, so numerous combat missions in Iraq.
Mhm.
There's probably stories upon stories upon stories that come from that, you know, experiences, um, thoughts, feelings. What stands out from your experience fighting in Iraq? And it could be good, it could be bad.
One day we were flying over, uh, Erbil and Mosul, kind of in northeastern Iraq. In the Bible, it's Nineveh.
Wow.
The book of Job was there, and you look down and it's like this round it looks like a wedding cake town. It does not look like a normal 20th century town. You could tell this was ancient. And my wingman, I was the mission leader that day. My wingman called me on the radio and said, "Lead head north." And the wingman never, ever, 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 ever says anything on the radio ever, and for sure, they never tell the flight lead what to do. So I immediately said, "Okay, something big's going on here." And so I said, "Hook left." We turned north, and I rejoined on him. And we're in Iraq, so like you don't talk on the radio. We're radio silent. And sure enough, there was smoke coming out of his airplane, and I got really close, and it was oil leaking. The F-16 has one engine, so you don't want oil leak. You don't want oil leaking out of your car. If it is leaking, you pull over and
Yeah.
you wait. You can't just pull over and wait when you're in your single seat F-16, single engine. So, and it was bad. We were 120 miles from the nearest airport in Turkey. Turkey was the nearest friendly country. By the way, we could look off to the right and there was Iran. We were right on the Iranian-Iraqi border. Um, and the dash one, the flight manual says the F-16 can go about 5 to 10 minutes without oil, and we were 20 minutes from that airfield. So anyway, so we went through this whole thing, uh, and I could talk for an hour about this incident. He eventually that started to lose thrust. We started to descend. I was like, "You gotta push forward to go farther," and his engine seized up, and it was really iffy. By that point, we'd finally made it into Turkey. We had to have him jettison his HARM missiles, these anti-radiation we were doing the Wild Weasel mission, so our job was to go look for enemy surface-to-air missiles. So we had to jettison those. and we had to drop his fuel tanks, and we didn't want to launch the HARM missiles because we were pointed at AWACS, and I didn't want to shoot an anti-radiation missile at the giant radar in the sky. Anyway, all this stuff was going on. Finally, his engine seized, and it was at the last minute. All right, ready, ready, turn. He turned. He landed with like, feet to spare. He barely, 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 barely made it to this runway, and it was Ataturk's death day. And Turkey, Ataturk is their George Washington. And so there was no one in the control tower. Literally, they were all out doing this ceremony. So he landed. We were calling every possible frequency. So anyway, he made it. I circled, coordinated with everybody, and landed. And the Turks had come out. This mob of people just pushed his airplane off the runway to clear the runway so other airplanes could land. It was an exciting day for sure.
Wow.
Yeah,
Oh,
you
it's
did a
so
great
good.
job.
That's so good. And then you went on to the next adventure in your life, and became an astronaut. So tell me, like, what was your thought on that? I mean, you didn't get enough excitement flying F-16s, you just had to go next level?
I had always wanted to be an astronaut when I was a kid. We didn't used to have the internet, so like I had to have books. I had books about Apollo, and I had all the patches memorized and all the different astronauts memorized. Um, and I never really thought I could do it, and people would say, "What do you want to be?" I want to be an astronaut. And they're like, roll their eyes. "Oh, that's nice. You should be an accountant or something else."
Mhm.
But I went ahead and pressed ahead at Edwards Air Force Base. So I was a test pilot at school. I hadn't graduated from TPS. I was still a student, and NASA said we're going to have a class of 2,000, a class of astronauts. And I went ahead and applied, and a lot of the folks there didn't apply because they're like, "Terry, you haven't even graduated yet. You don't have any experience. These other guys are smarter than you. They got more experience," and so on. And I said, "You're probably right," but I applied, and I kept on making it to the next step. Everybody assured me I had no chance of getting picked, and I got picked. I was the youngest pilot here at NASA. Anyway, so the lesson I have, Andrew, for folks is don't tell yourself no.
Mhm.
If there's some dream you have, don't tell yourself no. The first step is tell yourself yes if. If you want to be an astronaut, that's pretty hard. There's a lot of stuff you got to do. If you want to be a doctor, that's pretty hard. If you want to start a company, right? The bigger the dream, the harder the work. But that first step is don't tell yourself no. So anyway, so I came here to Houston 25 years ago as a new astronaut.
And, eventually flew, what, 2 space how many space shuttle missions did you fly?
I flew once on Space Shuttle Endeavour. We finished building the space station on
Okay.
STS-130. We were the final assembly flight. And then I flew with the Russians on a Soyuz. Lots and lots and lots and lots of thoughts about the Russians. And
Yeah.
I ended up that was 200-day flight, so ended up being the space station commander on that mission. So
So
spent a little over 7 months.
can you put your Endeavour flight in context with the Discovery, accident
Yeah.
and the timing around that? And you were probably right in the middle of all of that, I would
Yeah.
think.
I actually teach a lot of the speaking I've been doing. I teach a course at Harvard Business School about both the Challenger accident and the Space Shuttle accidents. We had two. Um, the first one was in '86. I was a freshman at the Air Force Academy. And then the second one was 2003. I was actually a family escort for Columbia. It was a Space Shuttle Columbia.
Okay.
Um, STS-107, Rick Husband had asked me to be a family escort. So I was there with the families at the runway in Florida waiting for Columbia to come back. I'd been with them for launch, and so it was awful, and it was a great lesson. And let me say this applies to politics today. During Challenger, engineers were saying, "Hey, this is dangerous. Hey, we have this problem." We had been seeing problems with the solid rocket motors, and the managers ignored it. They said, "We got to launch." 17 years later, the junior people from Challenger were now the bosses, and we had been having problems with foam on the space shuttle. People were speaking up, and then managers ignored it. And so, the most profound lesson that I teach when I do this business school lecture, it's one thing to learn a lesson, like learning a lesson is hard, right? It's another thing to remember the lesson.
Mm.
Remembering is much harder for humans because we tend to forget things. And when you see what's going on in the world today, I hate to bring it back to politics, but you and I are politicians. Um, we learned a lot of lessons back in the 1930s and 1940s, right? For decades, and now it seems like we're just forgetting those really important lessons.
Mm.
And those lessons have consequences for everyday working people. You may not think it's a big deal that we're threatening Greenland, but it is. So
Yeah.
Remembering lessons is tough.
And did I hear correctly that you were with the families
Yeah.
when the space shuttle that their loved ones were on didn't return?
Yeah.
That sounds incredible. Like,
Uh, yeah.
what was that like?
So after Challenger, when the space shuttle blew up, it was very famous. Everybody in the world saw it.
Sure.
The families were just there in the bleachers with everybody and with the TV cameras, and so they were all on film. It was horrific. So NASA came up with this program. They call it Family Escort. So where that was my job, where the families would be in a separate place. You know, if something went wrong, we had a procedure. We'll take them here and let them know what's going on. So Rick Husband, the commander, asked me, and I was a rookie at the time. I was a new guy, had never flown. Um, he asked me if I'd be a family escort. It was like the biggest honor of my life. It was exciting. We were there for lunch with everybody. I was hanging out with the kids, playing with them and stuff. During the mission, keeping them up to date. Hey, this is going on, that's going on. Brought them into mission control so they could do a FaceTime basically with the crew on the space shuttle. So it it was great. And then we were there at the landing, waiting for them to land, and the radio comm stopped, and then it was like, "Hey, what's going on?" And so we took them into our crew quarters, and they, told them what happened. So, which, by the way, in 2003, when this happened, there was no cell phone,
Cell
no
phone.
iPhones, and
Yeah.
thank God. So I got in the car, and the first thing I did was turn off the radio because I didn't want any news coming on. So we could do that. We could kind of make sure they got the accurate information in 2003. Today, you couldn't. Everybody's phone would have been exploding immediately. That's just part of the world we live in, I guess. But yeah, that was a tough thing. I'm still friends with many of the families, and it's a big sacrifice. The astronauts get to do the fun part, and it's the
Mhm.
husbands and wives and parents and
Yeah.
the people left behind that pay the
Mhm.
price.
The real sacrifice.
Yeah.
And so what year was that? 2003?
2003. Yeah.
And when was your first flight in the Endeavor?
2010.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when did the flights begin again?
2005, I think.
O
It was roughly 2 years, 2.5 years.
Okay.
So 2005 was, and then on 2000, that first flight, STS-114, there was another foam strike. The problem was foam hitting the heat shield,
Mhm.
and it happened again on the very first one we flew, and so then we had to wait another year. So I had to wait almost a decade to fly. It was everybody during that time just had to wait a long time because of a lot of reasons, but
Yeah. Yeah, and maybe for the younger audience that don't appreciate or understand, the significance or the focus that America had, every time a space shuttle took off, the entire country sort of held their breath,
right.
uh, and, um, and every time they landed, the entire country held their breath. Um, Today we have rockets coming up and rockets going here and there and crashing and Elon Musk doing this, that, and the other. It's too much. You can't keep it all together. But in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, um, this is where all of our attention was.
Yeah.
And of course, to your point, as a young boy, you wanting to be an astronaut, everyone wanted to be an astronaut. It's amazing that you actually, lived your dream. Um, When was so the space shuttle ended, that mission ended, and then you still worked into the, International Space Station, and, I think you probably flew on a Russian, Soyuz, is that what they were called?
Yeah.
To get
Yeah.
to dock, and then how much and tell me about that, the next phase of your career becoming the, space station commander and what that
Yeah.
was like.
Yeah. So after my shuttle flight, I had to do some real soul searching, and with my family, we were like, do I try and go back to the Air Force and finish an Air Force career? Or do I stay at NASA, or do I go, be a United Airlines pilot or whatever? There was different, or actually F-35. I'm good friends with the chief F-35 pilot at Lockheed. So I just said, you know what, Andrew, I love my 2-week flight. I love flying in space. I wanted to do it again. I hadn't had enough. And I said, all right, let's stick around. And so I got back in line. got picked to go do a space station flight this time at there was no space shuttle, and the SpaceX and Boeing capsules weren't ready yet, so the only way to get to the space station was on the Soyuz. So I started training in 2012. It was about a 2.5 year training flow. When I first started, I remember being in Moscow. I was by myself one weekend. I was walking around town doing language training because everything was in Russian. So I did a Russian language immersion training, and there was this big mob. And I went over, and it was Alexei Navalny was having a riot, not a riot, a protest. Um, because in 2012, that was when Putin had swapped with Dmitry Medvedev, and that was the year he violated his constitution and came back for a third term.
Got around it on a technicality.
Sounds familiar. And, yeah, and I remember seeing these big guys, they're dressed up like Navy SEALs, wearing masks, and I remember thinking, that's Russia. That's how Russia does law enforcement. That's not how we do it in America."
Wow.
Here we are.
Yeah, here we
Here we
are.
are. So, I've seen it in Moscow, and now I've seen it in Minneapolis, and so
Okay, before we get into the politics of it all, I still want to hear your experience because you spent months,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Months in the space station. Like, oh my gosh. So you lived for months in space. There's almost no one who can say they've done that. What's the one or two takeaways that you would share?
It is a beautiful planet. Our planet is awesome. We have planet A, there's no planet B. We really need to take care of this planet. Floating is really cool. You move around with your hands and you carry stuff with your feet, so it's like backwards. Um, and the space station has shown that people can live and work off the planet for a long period of time. So I think that's good for the future. But people say, "What's your favorite planet? Is it Jupiter?" You can see Jupiter in the night sky now. Go out after sunset, look up. The big bright orange star is Jupiter. It's not a star. My favorite planet is Earth. It is awesome. I actually took the most ever space photographs. There's some guy here at JSC in Houston that counts, and they told me I took the most ever photographs of any astronaut. Helped make an IMAX movie called A Beautiful Planet. So I loved filming the planet and sharing it. There's a guy, they're doing a space photography exhibit of my space photography in Nuremberg, ironically, the town, famous for other things.
Yeah.
But, I really love taking pictures of the planet. That never got old. There's so many different things. It's a really unique perspective. There's only a few hundred of us that have had that opportunity. So I was very blessed, very thankful to America. America's given me everything. So
It's calling, I mean, we use the word patriot a lot, but what we just covered in the last few minutes of your career from the Air Force Academy to the Air Force, flying F-16s, serving your country in harm's way in Iraq multiple times, and then moving beyond that into NASA and becoming an astronaut, a pilot indeed of the space shuttle, and then becoming eventually a commander of this International Space Station. I don't know if Patriot quite does it right because it's incredible what you've accomplished. Um, the last piece of that puzzle remains to be seen because you've now recently announced a campaign for Congress, and that's another huge challenge. And you mentioned before about your interest in just becoming an astronaut. How you just got to show up, you got to be there, you got to do it, you got to try.
Mhm.
You're showing up, you're trying, you're throwing your hat in the ring. Um, what made you decide to take this step into politics? It's nasty. It's ugly. When you're an astronaut, you have a reputation that is, you're well respected. People love you. Politicians in America, they let's be honest, they don't always have the best reputations. You're going to get your hands dirty. So what made you want to do that? And tell me a little bit more about your thoughts on how to win.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I have so many astronaut friends, and they're like, "Dude, like, everybody loves you now. Not everybody, half the people are going to hate you then. Why are you doing this?" So, of course, my joke is I lost a bet. But the reality is I love my country, and we have a great country. We have been blessed with the most amazing country in the history of humanity, and there's some forces that are of evil that are trying to destroy it. I mean, they literally are doing very bad things to our country, and I can't just sit around and watch that happen. I have a personality that I can't watch evil. Like, I wanna go in and fix things and not do that. So the last couple of cycles, I've supported other candidates, and there's a Bible verse, "To those who much has been given, much will be expected," and that's me. I've been given everything. I've been given so much by the country. So I just wanna serve, and I'm not doing this in a partisan way. People say, "Are you gonna vote 100% party line?" No, I'm gonna vote 100% for my district. I'm going there to represent the people of District 9. Um, I'm gonna do the right thing for the district, and when you see we talked about Greenland earlier. Like, we're threatening Greenland, and it wasn't just some offhanded comment and on to the next issue. We're doubling and tripling and quadrupling down, and we're making it very clear that we are going to do it. Europeans are sending troops to defend Greenland. I've had a German military officer reach out to me the other day, "Terry, what's going on? Like, we're gonna deploy to Greenland." Like, this is not this is not gonna help the people in District 9 pay their health insurance.
Hmm.
This is not gonna help the people in District 9 pay their bills. The people in my district, a lot of their young men and women join the military. This is gonna make their time in the military a lot more dangerous. We're better off when we have strong alliances. This is destroying NATO. This is literally gonna destroy NATO. The Danes, when I was in Iraq, they went and fought and died with us. There's a memorial in Copenhagen to, dozens or maybe hundreds of Danish soldiers who actually died supporting America, and now here we are. So this is like a really dark turn, Andrew, and we can't let this happen. Like this, we need to stop this immediately. So I'm throwing my name in the hat to represent all the folks in District 9.
Maybe you could give a little idea of what territory, what geography District 9 covers today.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I've been, block walking, going to small businesses, introducing myself. I haven't met anyone in my district who knows what's happening. It's insane. The steal that's in the midst of trying to happen. So District 9 is basically, if you think downtown Houston, the Astro Stadium, we're a few miles east of that, and it goes down to Pasadena, and then Pasadena out to Baytown. So if you've ever driven on the Houston Beltway and you've seen all the refineries there in Southeast Houston, that's my district. Um, so it's all the refineries and chemical plants there. And then from Baytown, go north up into Liberty County and some farming and ranching up there. So it's basically refineries, chemical plants. It's almost the entire Houston ship channel, which is super important, with some agriculture out in Liberty County. It's a pretty cool district, very much a working class district, and I love it.
Yeah, and tell me a little bit about your race. I mean, it's a Democratic primary.
Right.
There's other candidates, and so it's competitive. This isn't a shoe-in,
No,
and let me tell you, I'm speaking from experience when I
no. We both have experience. Yeah.
that those names, they add up, and there's confusion on the ballot, and it's hard for the everyday voter who is doing their job to vote, but it's also hard for them to do the research and really understand what the issues are and how to differentiate a candidate A from candidate B from candidate C.
Mm.
Um, so to those listening, right, there's a challenge to all Americans that we have to be engaged in this process. This is not a consumer experience where you walk in and you get served. This is a all hands on deck experience where, hey, if this is the person, if this is the candidate that you believe in, then you have to take a little bit of ownership into that, right?
Mhm.
And build that momentum, build that campaign together, because you just can't do it on your own. It's not an individual sport; it's a team sport. Tell me a little bit about how you're organizing, what you're doing, how you're going to reach these voters. Obviously, money is an important part of that, and all of those issues that I'm sure, working through.
Yeah. So as we film this, we're less than 7 weeks to the primary. The primary is on March 3rd. Early voting starts on February 17th, and mail-in ballots are being sent out as we speak. So like it's happening in the next few weeks. And to your point, it really is time to take ownership. Like there's big things happening. If you're a young person, are you going to have Social Security? Are you going to be able to buy a house? Are you going to have a job? Like those things really matter. And to our great Barbara Jordan, our fellow Texas Democrat, she said, "If you're not at the table, you're on the menu." And she was right. Like, it's time to take ownership. You know, if you're older, these issues matter too. So my district, District 9, like I said, it's the eastern part. Unfortunately, it's a very low turnout district. And so folks, please, you know, I haven't everybody that I talk to there is unaware of even what district they're in, much less the issues. There's
And the
6
district's in
Democrats.
play. The district's also in play. There's not an incumbent sitting in the
Absolutely,
seat.
this is an open seat, yeah. Now look, it's gerrymandered. We are literally in gerrymandering ground zero. So, it's tough, like, the Republicans drew it to win, and Trump won it, would have won it, and or would have won it had it existed. But you know what? Beto would have won it back in 2018 had it existed then. So, this is a tough district for Democrats, but it's winnable,
So
and
wait,
there
let me just emphasize that.
yeah,
If we rolled the time back to 2018 and we
mhm.
ran Beto's numbers in your district, the Democrat wins.
The Democrat wins. It was a
That's
blue
incredible.
wave year, it was a good candidate. I think this is gonna be a blue wave year because of all the stuff happening. I think I'm a good candidate, so I this is a winnable seat. I can win this seat, and it's one that they're trying to steal. They're Al Green is representing it now. What really is happening with gerrymandering in Texas, and probably many of your listeners know this, but they're just trying to steal black and brown districts. It's just
Mm.
blatant racism, and this is one of those seats. This is a chance for us to prevent that from happening. Many of the Republican seats in this area, Beto would have lost 60-40. This one he would have won. And so
Mm.
this is one I hope that we can put a lot of effort into. And I think a candidate like me, you know, as a 30-year Air Force veteran, as astronaut, I have been working in the energy industry for the last several years for an oil and gas company doing energy transition consulting. Um, so I think that background will play really well in this district. So we need to put some effort into winning it.
Your district, this district, District 9, is ground zero for gerrymandering, like you said, and for the games that Greg Abbott's played when he redrew the districts, right?
Yeah,
And just to remind everyone, we in Texas and in just like an interstate, you draw the districts every 10 years. You do that
yeah,
around the census so
right.
you know where people are. And it's a regularly scheduled event. Now, cue Donald Trump and a couple tweets, and next thing you know, Texas is redistricting mid-cycle for no reason other than because Donald wants them. And this District 9 used to be Al Green's district, used to cover a completely different set of people
Right.
with a different set of problems. And, magically, it's now been changed. And, obviously there's this new opportunity for you because of it. But we all kind of wish we weren't here. We all, it's an example of like, why did we do this to ourselves?
Right.
And there's so much of that happening right now with the chaos around Trump. How do you put Trump in perspective? Because listen, and I you know, the Democratic base obviously sees Trump for what he is, right? And that's great, but the Democratic base isn't enough to win in November.
Right.
How do you reach that voter, the moderate, the independent voter that, pays attention, but not that much attention, and sort of shake them a little bit and say, hey, look what's going on. Look what's
Yeah.
going on with all this noise.
Now is the time for that. I want to make one more point about the district and redistricting.
Sure.
The Texas legislature, Texas Republicans in the House and Senate need to grow a pair of huevos. The
Mm.
Indiana Republicans, who are the most conservative Republicans in the country, said no to Trump. Trump said, "We want you to redistrict," and they said, "No, that's not the right thing to do." Our Texas guys bowed down, got on their knees, and did what Trump wanted. So I'm running for Congress. Please vote for me and support me. But our House races, Texas House races, Texas Senate races are super important. There's a guy named Taylor Remmitt up in Fort Worth. Elections in a couple weeks. Let's get that guy elected because these guys are not doing what we want. They're doing what the guy in Mar-a-Lago wants. So this really is a huge indictment against the Texas legislature, and that stain on their history is never going to go away.
I mean, how do you reach this independent, moderate
Yeah,
voter
100%.
who is paying attention but not a lot of attention?
Right. So what I try and do with every issue is you can look at if you're a political nerd, if you're following foreign affairs, you can go, okay, invading Greenland is horrific. But if you're not, the point I make is, how is that gonna help you pay your health insurance? How is that gonna help you pay for your rent? How is that gonna help you get a job? By the way, unemployment is growing. I think we're gonna have a real unemployment crisis, especially with AI, with what's happening with AI. So I try and bring these issues back to people. And I know, look, I criticize the Democratic Party a lot. In 2024, we told America that Joe Biden wasn't too old. The man was too old.
He
We
was
told America that the border is not a problem. The border was a problem. We told America democracy, 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 and then we parachuted Kamala in without a primary. I think if Kamala would have gone through the primary and won it, I think she'd be president today. But so our party has some egg on its face the last time. But the problem is we were, making mistakes, and Trump is a threat to the global freedom and democracy. So we really need to bring it back to, how is this nonsense helping you? The answer is it's not. How is tariffs chaos not helping you? And it's not. It's a tax. It's making things more expensive at Walmart. Billionaires don't care about that, but it's hurting you. So as Democrats, we really need to take the big issues of the day and bring it back to the local people. And the one issue, here's something, Andrew, that is not going to help you put food on the table. But at the end of the day, you know what nobody's talking about now is Jeffrey Epstein. All of this distraction, nobody's talking about it. They're violating the law. The law says release them all a month ago, and they still have only released 1%. So, um,
Yeah, the chaos that gets created by all of these tweets and all of these different actions, you can't keep track of it all.
yeah,
You've been a commander of a space station, you've been a leader in NASA. You know how hard it is and how important it is to communicate clearly so that people know which direction you're moving, so they all can move in that same direction. You also know from your experience that every organization reflects the culture of its leader.
mhm,
And so, whether that's the battalion commander, the space station commander, or the commander in chief, every organization reflects the culture of its leader.
mhm,
And what worries me is that we're now living in the culture of President Donald Trump. And we've seen, you mentioned the point about how easy these Texas Republicans are to bow down. And I mean, they would never for a second consider even, potentially pushing back on something that Trump says,
right.
right? And that's I'm not speculating on that. The facts are behind me on that.
100%.
And so we're living in this new culture, the Trump culture, and it's changing our society. And then you mix onto that the technology advances. You mentioned AI. You spin it around in a circle, and you throw all the social media into the middle of that, and the fact that so much of it's controlled by just a few people. Two billionaires in America and China control all of our social media.
Mhm.
And it does. It's not a recipe for success, quite frankly. And the one thing that I also feel strongly about is I like gridlock. I like good old fashioned gridlock,
Mhm.
where you have maybe the Democrats have the White House and the Republicans have the Senate, and you know what you have to do? You have to talk about it and you have to
Right.
work on it, and that's a style and a culture, and then you work out, you negotiate progress. And to me, your experience set in the military, I think, is the ideal experience set, because when you're in the military, you don't get to pick who shows up, in your command.
No.
They come up into your command, and you have to deal with the personalities. You have to deal with all of the side shows that probably come up, and yet you have to be successful and find a way through. And you've done that, and you've proven that over and over again. So, um, I guess I'll give you the last word. What do you want listeners to hear that as your message? What you bring to the table as moving from Colonel Virts to Congressman Virts, and what do you need to make that actually happen?
Andrew, at the core of why I'm running, for the last 50 years, we had a system under FDR and LBJ where things were basically set up to help the middle class and working Americans. And that playing field has been being tilted and tilted and tilted and tilted for the last 50 years. It is stacked against working folks now, and I want to help move that back. And the Republican Party, unfortunately, in the year 2026, is going to keep on pushing that tilt playing field to stack it against working folks. So I'm asking for the privilege to represent District 9. We really need to push back to your point. Like the Republicans, for 30 years, we've been a single party state. We have the most uninsured people in the entire country in this great state of Texas. Our education system is near the bottom. So it's time for this new crop of Democrats. I think I'm a part of this crop of Democrats that's focused on economic issues, on helping families, with their health insurance and affordability issues. It's time for us to win. The seat that I'm in is a winnable seat. Not every seat in Texas is probably winnable, and most likely this one is. And so I'm just asking folks to really help support this victory. If we can win this, this will throw some serious cold water on this mid-decade gerrymandering disaster that they're trying to do. So terryvirts.com is my website if folks want to help support me there. But I really appreciate your perspective about about everything is really helpful. And the point you were making about the culture of the leader permeates through the organization. Right now, we have a culture of, thin-skinned, grievance and retribution, and worst of all, corruption. I mean, it is pay for play.
Mm.
For folks, you might be a guy, $35 an hour is kind of the prevailing wage for a lot of union jobs in our thing. If you're making $35 an hour, Andrew, I just did this math yesterday. Elon Musk has been gaining $500 million a day for the last several years, $500 million a day. It'll take you 7,200 years, 7,200 years at $35 an hour to make what Elon Musk makes in a day. So this playing field is stacked against us, the folks that Democrats want to represent. So let's start winning elections and take the great state of Texas and take the country back.
Hey, Terry, thank you for your time. And more importantly, thank you for your service to our country. Thank you for staying in the fight. Someone with as many years of service as you have could have easily said, I've done enough and done other things. And you continue to make the decision to serve. And it's inspiring to me. I think it will be inspiring to our listeners as well. And yes, let's get involved. Let's take some ownership. Let's take some ownership in your campaign, and let's push the ball across the line. So
Yes,
thanks,
sir.
Terry.
Thank you.